Inspired podcast. I'm your host, Daisy Farrell, and I am a medium, a healer, a teacher, and artist based in the Hudson Valley, New York. All right, so it has been a while since I've had a chance to record an episode, and I'm finally doing it, and I'm really happy to be kind of back on track here for you guys. So I wanted to, I had done a live on this a while ago, and it was really good, and I really wanted to make a podcast episode of the same topic because I think it's a really important topic to have out there. It's something that I really don't see really out very much at all in terms of discussion or people talking about it. And I think it's something really helpful and important to bring up. So what I'm going to be getting into today is the whole topic around being afraid to see a medium or a psychic, which it's something I encounter a lot. And for various reasons, and I'm going to kind of touch on those reasons, and I'm going to talk about possible perspectives that maybe you can think about if you're one of these people that might help ease that fear a bit. So I'm going to just get into it here. So number one, I would say that one of the most common things that I will hear from people when they bring up, oh, well, I'm afraid to go see a medium or a psychic, or I'll hear a friend saying, this person had a really traumatic loss and I really wish that they would go to see someone, but they're afraid to. So I hear that a lot, and often it's because these people have unresolved things with the person that has passed away, or maybe multiple people that have passed away. And that's normal though. Okay. It's very, very common. I would say that across the board, really, there's always something out there that's lingering or something maybe unfinished when it comes to any loss that we might have. Obviously, some are more intense than others, but it's a very universal thing regardless. And I think a big part of it too is that they're generally afraid to hear what the person has to say. Because I will often hear, oh, what if they're mad at me? What if they don't like what I've done with my life? What if, and all these different thoughts around that. I'm afraid that they're going to yell at me. I'm afraid that they are disappointed in some way. Now, first off, what I really want to say here is I have done countless readings at this point, and I have never, ever, ever encountered that situation. Just putting that out there. I've never encountered a scenario where a loved one comes through angry and bitter and, here for vengeance, essentially, right? That has never, ever come through in any of my readings. And I've had readings where, the person coming through maybe wasn't a very nice person, in life and had a very difficult life on Earth side of things. But they've never come through with that kind of vengeful, angry energy. And a thing that I share with a lot of clients and students too is that when we cross over, a lot of all this human stuff that causes these types of problems goes away. It's the condition of being a human, that kind of leaves the building, I guess. I don't know if that's the best way of putting it, but it goes away when we cross over. Now, I'm not saying that the minute that we pass away, we become like Buddha, we don't. We don't become suddenly pure and all-seeing and all-knowing. Not at all. We're still ourselves, right? But to me, you simply gain this higher perspective that was simply not accessible to you when you were alive. And I think it really depends on the person, of course, on the spirit person, because I've found a range there. Because I think that it really depends. Because I've had moments where there's certain people where they are really open and ready to evolve and ready to really dive into all of this stuff and talk about it and talk about why they did the things they did and make amends and so forth. Whereas there's other times that I feel maybe it takes longer. It takes longer for someone to sit with what they did, right? And I think it really depends. It's a very unique thing. I don't think that somebody is stuck in purgatory or anything like that. But to me, it's more just that they maybe need some more time to sit with themselves, sit with and process what just happened to them, first off, and also the things and choices that they had in their life that had an impact on the people that they loved and themselves, right? And I think the other thing too is that when we have this gained perspective after crossing over, it can hurt more in a way because it takes away these defense mechanisms that we've used our whole life to avoid a truth, right? So I understand why sometimes maybe they need to sit with it more and maybe are not always ready to jump right into it necessarily. And so in some of those situations, I'll have a loved one come through and they will be able to acknowledge maybe what took place or give an apology or at least kind of, explain that they understand their part in something. But it may be just as simple as that, right? They may not get into more about it. And so it depends. But like I was saying, it's never been this situation where they are angry, right? And why would they be? Because that's the other thing that I wanted to point out here. Try also putting yourself in the perspective of the spirit people. Because if we had very limited opportunities to communicate with the people that we loved more than anything, would we really want to waste that time being mad? Probably not, right? Probably not. And especially after these human conditions have been stripped away, really what's left is love. Love and that connection that never goes away and has always been there. And if anything, it's shown in its purest form. So it's something to think about and to know that I've never seen somebody take that opportunity to, make their loved one feel worse or to tell them that they're disappointed. It's always been a place of wanting to repair things if there is a need for that. A reassurance, to tell you I'm still by your side. I'm watching the things that are going on. I love you, right? And that makes sense. It makes sense. So that's just if that can help reassure you a bit, if that's something you're concerned about, that's very much something that I, just from my own experience, can really say. And a couple other perspectives on this too is, there can be situations where there's maybe someone in spirit that you are afraid of, right? Or you really, really, really don't want to talk to them. Just to make that clear, you're in control of that, right? And I would always say, don't allow yourself to not have that opportunity of connection with maybe some people you do want to hear from, just because there's one maybe person that you are afraid of encountering in that type of setting. If a medium you are going to is well trained and has good ethics, they should be mindful of that stuff, right? And it's also totally okay to explain to a medium, hey, I understand that person being in spirit. I am not comfortable speaking with them. Can we please move on to someone else, right? That's totally okay to do. Especially if the medium hasn't maybe made it clear that that's what they want you to do in that situation. I think it's just realizing that you are in control of this in a lot of ways too. We don't have to subject ourselves to trauma or something that doesn't feel right if we are going to someone. And that really leads me into another kind of tip or pointer of all of this is please do your research. Do your research because there's a lot out there. There is so much stuff out there. It's really honestly overwhelming, especially now. And it's unfortunate. It's not like in mediumship, right? You get like a master's degree that you can hang on your wall and then people know that they can trust you. Unfortunately, it's not quite like that in this industry. And it leaves a lot of room for people that I think maybe have good intentions, but they just don't have the correct training. And it can be really, really harmful. So I would just say that if you're ever considering getting a reading with someone, I would kind of follow a few pointers around that. First off, of course, having a lot of great reviews, awesome. That's great. But I would probably say take that even a step further, and word of mouth, I feel, is even better. If you can actually hear from somebody in person, or from their voice, right, that they went to this person and they had a really, really positive experience, that's even better than seeing like a written review online. I'm not saying that all reviews are wrong, but sometimes people do pay for reviews, right? They're not always correct. So I wouldn't just go off of that. And also look at their website. Look at what their bio says. Does it say anything about their background in training? I think that's important. But also keep in mind this. Pretty much when it comes to mediumship, again, unlike college, right, or things like that, you can basically take a class with anyone, no matter what kind of level you are, no matter who you are. If you have the money, you can take a class with all these big names in mediumship. And so be mindful too of when people are quote unquote, name dropping in their bio. Oh, I worked alongside with this person or so-and-so, or I went to Arthur Finley. Again, Arthur Finley's great. However, anyone can go, right? So it doesn't automatically mean that the person is good. So I would look beyond kind of name dropping in that way and see more of what their philosophy is and how they like to approach their work, and what their training really entailed, right? So that's also important. And also, I think another helpful thing can be to see if they have samples of their work online somewhere to watch, whether this be like clips of them giving readings, or maybe they do demonstrations. So, gallery style readings. And generally people will have recordings of those. Or another thing that you can certainly do is, if this person's local to you, go to one of their dems before you get a one-on-one with them, right? That's a great way to get a feel for how they operate as a medium. And I will just quickly say, not all mediums, some phenomenal mediums, right? They don't do demonstrating. It's just not their thing. And that's fine. But if someone does offer it, it can be a helpful thing to utilize for that. But if they don't, I would just, again, look at those other ways to maybe experience their work if that's something they put out. And lastly, use your intuition, right? Because that's important in this process too. Somebody could have great credentials, they could seem fabulous, right? But if you feel off about it, trust yourself. So I would just say, listen to your inner voice, to kind of what that's guiding you towards, and then also utilize maybe those other tools that I mentioned to make sure that you are going to somebody that's not going to leave you feeling horrible. And so going into feeling horrible from readings, I have had those experiences, and really, in my opinion, I feel that the only time you should feel worse after a reading is due to grief. And what I mean by that is, for example, when I had just lost my dad and I had some readings, I would feel horrible afterwards, right? And it had nothing to do with the medium. It had nothing to do with the reading itself. Like, the reading could be great, right? And the medium could be great. But really, it's more so that it's bringing up this grief. And it was a reminder of like, oh my God, this fleeting moment of connection with the person I miss so much. And it just kind of brings up all this grief of like, oh my God, I can't believe this is how I'm talking to this person right now, right? It doesn't feel good. So that's normal to me, right? That's normal, and that doesn't necessarily mean that we're having a bad reading, right? And then maybe an exception outside of that, there could be that a medium touches on something that is sensitive or vulnerable. But what I would hope is that it's something that ultimately you needed to hear, and it is doing something important for your highest purpose and good in just your self-development, okay? So that would maybe be another time where maybe we just don't feel great after a reading because it brings up emotion, or it brings up these realizations or these feelings that we don't necessarily know what to do with yet. So that's also probably an exception, but there's a fine line with that as well. And so that kind of leads me into another piece that I think comes up a lot as well with all of this is, well, I don't go to a psychic or medium because I don't want to know what they see. I don't want to hear what's going to happen. I don't, that scares me. I don't want to know. I'm afraid to see what they're going to say about me, right? And so again, that touches on kind of stuff that I already said, right? Where first off, if a medium is well trained and knows what they're doing, they are not going to traumatize you. They should not be saying things that are going to make you scared for your life, like paranoid, afraid, right? Questioning yourself, questioning who you are. None of that should be a thing in a reading that you get with a credible person. But one thing I also will say is that maybe sit with yourself with that and think about it. Because is there maybe something that we're avoiding in ourselves that is really actually behind that emotion or that statement, right? Because that could very much be the case as well. And I'm a big advocate for vulnerability all the way. All the way, man. I mean, vulnerability, it really saved my life. So I'm always all for get vulnerable, please. Let's deeply dive into all the layers of ourselves. Let's see it all. Let's honor it all. Let's learn to love it all, right? So that is something that I just would bring up because it can certainly be a reason that we avoid these things. Again, not that you have to go have a reading, not at all. But if you feel like you want one or you're feeling like you're called to one, but you avoid it because of that, that's where, again, I would just sit with that thought and that feeling within yourself. And this also touches on predictions because I think that's, again, unfortunately something that is not portrayed well in the media, especially in like movies and stuff. And also, does actually happen. And I cannot tell you how many times I've had clients come to me saying, oh my God, I went to the psychic and they said I was going to be in a car accident and it hasn't happened yet and I can't stop thinking about, right, all that kind of stuff and making these predictions. That drives me crazy, first off. I would never do that to someone. I think it's just really harmful. And something that I've shared with my students is just that even if we can make a prediction and it happens, is it helpful for our client to know that? Especially if there's nothing we can do to change it, right? Probably not. Probably not. If anything, it's going to make them anxious or it's going to impact them in a negative way. And this also touches on situations where people in readings, have these experiences where someone will say, you have to do this or you must do that. You have to break up with your boyfriend, blah, blah, blah. Or, or this will not happen for you or something that you want is not going to happen. First off, if anyone is ever saying that to you, please leave. Get your money back, go away, don't listen to them. That's just terrible. I hate stuff like that. And because also, here's the other thing. Psychics and mediums are just people, okay? I think that's another thing that sometimes gets, brought up in this industry of ego. And it's almost like we're this higher being or this higher wise, sage that knows all and knows all the answers. And, they definitely know you better than you know yourself. And that's all BS. It really is. It's not true. We're people. We're just people. And we're people with our own people problems. We're not immune to any of that. And we don't have all the answers. And and I think that's another thing because that's also something that I really try to teach too, is that I would never rely on a psychic or a medium to give you the answers, right? It can be a super helpful tool. It can validate what you already know to be true in terms of decisions that maybe you want to make for yourself, but make them for you. Make your decisions. Because at the end of the day, you know you better than anyone in the world, anyone in the universe. It's you, right? So I would never ever listen to somebody that is trying to kind of say that they know better than you do, really, right? And that's also circling back to, using your intuition, which I mentioned as well, use it when you're in a reading. If something doesn't quite fit for you, or, you kind of think about it and, I don't know, it just doesn't sit well, listen to that. Because maybe they're just misinterpreting something. It happens. We don't always get things correct or dead on, right? So that's also something to keep in mind. We're not always accurate 100% of the time. And another thing I always like to say about prediction stuff too is think of it this way. At least in my opinion, I feel that predictions and things that are going to happen in our life, I think it's kind of this infinite string of possibilities that can take place. I do think that there are some core maybe themes or major things in our life that are meant to happen, but I think there are like an endless amount of pathways that can take us there. And I think those factors have to do a lot with our own free will, the decisions we make, things that take place. Who knows? I think it's so much more than we could ever wrap our head around, really. And when you're going for a reading, this is literally just a snapshot in time at that one moment in time that you are sitting in front of them or receiving the reading from them. That it is this particular balance of, things going on in your life and energies within yourself that make this particular prediction feel correct or feel possible. And guess what? The minute you walk out of the door, those factors can change because they're always changing, in my opinion. Now, may it come true at some point? Sure, it could, but it also may not. And so we can't, I wouldn't say, don't victimize ourselves or trap yourself in this kind of tunnel of fear, right? Of what's going to happen? Oh my God, is that going to happen? Again, if someone does that to you, I would not go back to them. I would not trust that information fully, right? So that's just kind of what I feel about that stuff. And remember that there's free will. There is free will. And just because somebody is picking up on something and has a sense of something within your life, you get to decide what works for you at the end of the day. Okay? And just because they have, the word psychic on their title or whatever, it does not give them any other credibility to direct your life. And a few other tips that I would add to all of this is when we go for a reading, first off, let's say you did your research, you picked someone fabulous, you feel really good about it. Awesome. That's honestly probably going to take care of itself in all these issues. And when you are in the reading, again, I would say try to be as open-minded as possible. I know it's really hard sometimes when we are just really wanting to hear from this particular person, right? And sometimes they don't come through right away. Sometimes they don't show up at all. And that can be very, very frustrating. But I also know that spirit is very, very smart. And there's always a particular reason why that unfolds in the way that it does. It's never because your loved one does not want to talk to you. That is not true. But I think there are, again, other factors at play that we still don't even fully understand. So just keep in mind that it's great to have a particular person that you want to hear from, but also be open to the possibility of anyone coming through. Because whoever is coming through, they're there for a reason. And there could be something really, really important that ends up transpiring when you allow that process to unfold. I also find that when I have somebody that's maybe had a more significant and traumatic loss in their life, it's very common that I will get someone else first to come in. Someone else, as in someone in spirit for them, that maybe passed longer ago, beforehand, just to kind of start the flow of things. And then they bring in the more significant relationship forward. I've seen that happen a lot. And there's other things that have happened as well in my different readings that I've done that have really shown me to trust why people come through when they do. And I won't get into all that right now, but there's been a lot of situations that have really shown me, oh, I get it. Because just for a quick example, there are times where maybe someone has never had a reading before, right? And they're skeptical. And, I would bring through somebody that maybe they were not expecting to hear from, but it was very validating and had a lot of evidence in it. And then that way, when they come to me for a second reading, they're able to trust it more. And let's say it's for the person that they actually really wanted to hear from, right? That actually makes sense to me because sometimes people need to warm up to it even, right? I also think that there are times, which I did kind of touch on before, that when your loved one passes, I think that they can instantly start communicating. I don't think that there's a situation where, 1 year or whatever like that. Like, I don't agree with that. But I will say that sometimes they need some time. And I have had that happen where, they may come through, but maybe they're not super talkative, or maybe they're just like kind of in the background. And especially if somebody's had a more traumatic death or something abrupt, something like that, it makes sense. Like maybe they need a moment to process what happened to them. So keep that in mind as well. There's a lot of different reasons why this stuff kind of plays out the way it does. And so the less that we can be forceful and directing the reading, the better it usually is going to go for you. Because again, like I said, I get wanting very specific answers to things, but if somebody is well trained, well connected, they're going to get what you need. And I do say this to students and stuff too, where my goal is really to give you what you need, not always what you want. And that's not easy for some people. I get it. But to me, that's really honoring. It's honoring what you really need for your best self, for your evolution, for your healing. And it's not an easy thing to always digest or take in. But it's the way I like to work. And again, there's a way of doing it that isn't harmful. That's the other thing. I think that there can be psychics or mediums that pick up on particular sensitive things, but they just go right in there. They just dive right in and go about it in a very aggressive way. And that's not my style. I really try to be very tactful around any of these more sensitive areas, but I also don't shy away from it because I think it's really important that we don't. And for anyone listening too that's a developing medium, I think that's another important point, is that I get wanting to avoid these more maybe uncomfortable areas in our mediumship, but that's why they're there, right? Because again, think about it. If our life was falling apart in every possible way, and we go to a medium and they say, oh, your grandma's here and she's baking a cake and she's really happy. Okay, thank you. And that's it. I'd be pissed, right? So people go because they need that support, and they want us usually to go in those deeper areas. But again, there's a way to do it that is leaving them feeling worse or confused or whatever. And again, when you're doing your research, that's to me what makes somebody well qualified. It's someone that is not afraid to go in those sensitive areas for you, but they do it in a sensitive way. And unfortunately, too, that's, I think, where there's a big lack in training with mediumship, is that people are not necessarily trained or equipped to handle people in their most vulnerable places, which is something that we deal with constantly in this work. But it kind of blows my mind how little people are prepared for that at times. I could probably go on and on and on about all of this, but I feel like those are some key points that I really wanted to just bring forward, and I would love to hear your insight on any of this, anything at all. Maybe even if you wanted to share about a reading that you had that wasn't so great, and why was that, versus one that was really positive, and what were the the components that made it really positive. All of that would be really great to hear. And I just would say in closing to, again, do your research. Do your research. I'm going to say it five times. And then also try to face some of those fears. Because if you go to someone good, they should gently go there in a way that is not going to be totally disruptive of your peace, right? But I think it's important for us to go in the uncomfortable spaces sometimes. And I mean that as the medium and as a client. That's really where the growth happens. That's where we see immense and beautiful change, if we choose it. So I hope that this has been supportive. I hope it's helpful. It's something, again, I just wanted available to really anyone that is kind of unsure of what to do, or they don't know. Or maybe they just had a bad reading, right? I just hope that this can be helpful, and I will be back very, very soon. I promise I am going to be more on top of some new episodes for you guys. So have a fabulous rest of your day, and I will talk to you soon.